I've done a lot of videos on Ukraine. It obviously is an incredibly important topic, and it's funny you and I, if you study this stuff, you can know the real reasons without having to do much research. That the real reason some of this shit is going on, like that Russia didn't just that Putin and Russia didn't just wake up one day and go, I feel like I'll just invade a country. There's got to be some more shit going on, and of course you've been covering it for years and years, but. And we don't need to go through all the details, but the funding and arming of the Nazis, which you've covered extensively, and the U.S. doesn't even do it that quietly, considering you have photos of McCain standing with them. You have the Congress voting to remove the ban on funding neo-Nazis in whatever 2013, 2014, whenever they did it, but. This came out just the other day, which I like when you get to say, see, we told you so. That's always a fun moment, even though sometimes it takes a year or two to actually get the admission. But in this case, it just took a month or two. So this is from Common Dreams, but they're covering a statement by the U.S. Secretary of Defense is admitting that the real strategic goal in Ukraine is to quagmire Russia. And he was asked how the America views success. What are the goals for success? And he added to, we want to see Ukrainian sovereignty, all the stuff you expect him to say. He then said, we want to see Russia weakened. So that's essentially it right there. That says he's saying it's a proxy war, correct?
Yeah, that's definitely the goal, is to just bleed Russia as much as possible. And so in order to do that, the U.S. is basically just said, well, we're just going to arm whoever is willing to fight Russia. And who's willing to fight Russia is the people who hate Russians the most, which are Nazis. And so, suddenly it's considered Russian propaganda to point out that there are a bunch of Nazis in Ukraine, but it's true. And, you can, it's incredible. I don't know. To me, it's just we're in such an incredible moment, this kind of phase of this psyop where people are just basically celebrating Nazis. There was that Azov chant, that demonstration in Lower Manhattan a couple of days ago on Saturday, where people are just chanting Azov, Azov, which is a straight up neo-Nazi battalion integrated into the National Guard in Ukraine that is trained, armed, and funded by the United States. And
some of them legit have swastikas on their outfits, but all of them have the modified swastika, their new logo they have, but it's still swastika, adjacent.
Right. Yeah, exactly. There's no getting around it. They are straight up Nazis, in every sense of the word. And, the fact that, I don't know. I remember a few years ago, during the Trump era, when, around like Charlottesville and all that stuff, it was like the big thing was punching Nazis. And now like that stuff is gone. It's weird. Nobody is like wants to punch Nazis anymore. Now everyone wants Nazis to punch Russia.
Well, and the big mainstream media push or discussion was Trump likes or is supporting Nazis, which in many ways he was. But now the mainstream media is propping up Nazis. PBS PBS did the interview with the mayor of that Ukrainian town with Stefan Bandera, the right. Stefan Bandera portrait behind him slightly blurred out.
Right.
So a well-known Nazi sympathizer.
Right. So it's like, obviously they know who it is. It's not like they just made a mistake. Like, oh, that's who that guy is. It's like they knew ahead of time. Let's just blur that out, and no one will know, because that's it. And no one will know we're supporting Nazis if we just cover up that portrait in the back. So yeah, the U.S. just wants permanent war to bleed Ukraine to bleed Russia, and just use Ukraine as a battering ram and fight Russia to the last Ukrainian. And it's extremely dangerous because there's constant, escalation. There's pressure on Biden from the neocons and real, ideologues in the State Department who have little attachment or maybe no attachment to reality, that this, proxy war could easily escalate into direct conflict. I mean, if you watch mainstream media, there's constant talk about, we need to send more weapons and better weapons and
Oh my
bigger
God.
weapons.
And the press conferences, the press corps is like begging the, Biden and the press secretary, please, have a no-fly zone, which is basically nuclear war,
Right.
shoot down Russian jets. Like, it's amazing to watch them beg for their own nuclear annihilation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're I don't know, we're supposed to think that, like, if we just if we just take out Russian warplanes, they won't react. They won't retaliate. That could so easily escalate, as planners in the Pentagon well know, that's will quickly escalate to possible nuclear war. And so, which is, does that stay in Ukraine or Europe, or, are we, is Washington D.C. does that turn into a mushroom cloud too? But basically, the absolute worst thing possible. So that's what the U.S. is trying to do, and is basically just risking all of this stuff in order to, punish Russia, because it wants, total global domination, because the U.S. wants total global domination with no competitors, and cannot accept the reality that there are other countries with similar power that have the right to exist, just like, the U.S. does. So
the U.S. for a long time has had a good measure of hegemony, global hegemony, and the U.S. empire is fading. We're in late stage capitalism. Most of the resources have been extracted. We got to this place of one of the richest countries in the world by extracting and destroying other cultures. You just were talking about Haiti, for example, and now our ruling elite, these sociopaths at the top, are incredibly worried about cooperation between nations. They're incredibly worried about Russia and China working together with certain EU countries, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and various economics that were aligning. So we were seeing cooperation between countries, which, countries that are cooperating economically tend to not go to war with each other, and they tend to try and be helpful to each other. But we don't want that, because that's bad for us. So we're creating this, at the very least, economic world war. Let's hope not a hot world war, but we're creating this economic, dividing of the world, a new kind of Iron Curtain. And it's among many things, it's turning the EU back, into feudal states under the dollar, and it's cutting off connections and cooperation with Russia. And we're trying to drive a wedge between Russia and China. And of course, we need to be working together as countries to solve the globe's problems.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a crazy geopolitical reconfiguration going on right now, with basically the West cutting off Russia. And it's not, it's not previous years. Actually, I mean, Russia has been preparing for this for several years, since 2014, since the Maidan coup, because they essentially knew this moment was coming. So all the sanctions that the U.S. has leveled against Russia, the economic pullout, all of the corporations pulling out, they thought it was going to destroy the Russian economy. And the Russian ruble, took a nosedive at first, but now it's recovered to its, position before everything kicked off.
And it's actually, this will circle back to censorship. It's exactly what Scott Ritter said would happen. I know you talked to him as well. I had him on in the early days, right after RT America was deleted. I had him on my live stream, and he said, Russia hasn't played their oil card yet. And when they do, Europe is screwed royally. And the economic ripple effects are going to be massive. And sure enough, I mean, it was weeks later, but sure enough, here we are. Russia's playing their oil card, and it's not pretty, and it's not going to be pretty for Europe.
Yeah. Now, so yesterday, well, a couple of weeks ago, Russia said that it wants to be paid for natural gas for its energy supplies to Europe in rubles. And basically, the EU said, no, we don't want to do that. And so it's, well, okay, get your gas somewhere else. And they don't have another supply. Europe is, look, for the well-being of the average European, Europe has to be integrated with Russia. I mean, it can't, otherwise it just has to pay for far more expensive American natural gas that's shipped that's shipped overseas. And so now, yesterday, Bulgaria is, they announced.
By the way, sorry to interrupt, but I don't like to use euphemism natural gas, so I just call it planetary death fluid. So I hope you don't mind.
Okay, all right, yeah, there we go. So, Bulgaria and Poland are now going to be cut off from Russian.
Yeah, they just cut off their oil. Yeah,
and so then, this is incredible to me. I tweeted it out. I don't know if you can pull up the tweet, but the Prime Minister of Bulgaria, Kirill Petkov is his name. He encouraged his citizens, as the gas is being cut off, and Bulgaria is the poorest country in the EU. He told his citizens, and this guy's trained at Harvard, to take their salary and donate it to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense so they can buy more weapons. That's what he told them to do. So, I mean, it's hard.
I have it here in 1 second. Is that it?
Yeah. So this guy, and he puts up like a bank account for the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. It's just incredible the level of stupidity that these European leaders are displaying in their, total obedience to the U.S. and in going against their own interests. I mean, it's just, it's total suicide from Europe.
Donated to the Ministry of Defense. I mean, and I love you. If you go on Amazon, it's like as a banner at the top, donate to Ukraine.
Right.
And I'm like, I wonder where that money's going. Funneled through Amazon and the U.S. Defense Department. Where does that money end up?
Yeah, exactly. Every social media, like I used Airbnb like 2 weeks ago. I was in California and went to Joshua Tree National Park, and Airbnb is like, help Ukraine. If you log into Google, everything, help Ukraine. LinkedIn, I had to look at a LinkedIn profile, and it was like, get the latest updates from Ukraine. Everything's, it's just this incredible psyop. And it's
Airbnb, the business that has apparently spent millions trying to cover up that they have a rape problem.
Yeah.
They care about the Ukrainians.
Right. Yes, exactly. How's Airbnb? What have they had to say about Yemen lately? The worst.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah, actually, what I tweeted the other day was because Israel was bombing Damascus yesterday, maybe. And I tweeted, so I guess this means every American liberal is going to change their thumbnail to the Syrian flag, and all Israeli athletes are going to be banned from competition, correct?
Right. Yeah, it's like when I go, into like downtown DC or any of the kind of wealthier neighborhoods, or even, just the kind of the drone boxes where all the people who work in the in government and all the NGOs around Capitol Hill, where they all live, it's just Ukrainian flags everywhere. And then if you go into the poorer neighborhoods of DC, there's none. It's just obviously such a class thing where it's this basically people showing their obedience to propaganda by having the flag out there or putting it in their profile, or just being so worried about Ukraine, which obviously war is hell, but nobody cared about, nobody in the US.
I'm opposed to the Russian invasion like I'm opposed to all war, but acting like it just started yesterday and there's no lead up, and that the U.S. didn't help create this proxy war, and that the U.S. is not trying to create peace at all, and in fact pressuring Zelensky and Ukraine to not actually end this thing. You need to understand that, or you're a goddamn child who is, doesn't want to actually think about the reality of the world.
Yeah, exactly. It's just this. I mean, this war has been going on since 2014 as a result of the U.S. coup. The U.S. orchestrated coup in Ukraine that, in which the coup regime immediately launched a war on the republic. So in the basically two statelets broke away because they saw a bunch of Nazis coming to power who want to kill Russians, and these majority Russian areas were like, wait a minute, we're gonna get slaughtered. And so these Nazis come to power and say, we want Ukraine without Russians. And so Like that's when the war started.
Dan, someone asked this earlier. Sorry, I don't have it handy, but if you want to answer this real quick, and then we'll wrap up in a few minutes. But Zelensky's Jewish.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think they call a Jew who there's like a term for Jews who collaborate with Nazis. I mean,
capos,
capo. I mean, it was
Capo?
not kindly looked upon in World War II. The fact is, Zelensky is, yes, he is Jewish. If there's a really good piece in the Gray Zone about his about how Zelensky made peace with Nazis. He never emphasized his Jewish identity prior to where it became useful, just recently. And he, was just a comedian, and basically had nothing to do with Judaism. And all of a sudden it's useful.
Yeah. And on top of that, he was put into that position by a billionaire. I forget the guy's name. If you
Igor Kolomoisky.
Yeah. And that guy funded and helped create the TV show that made him a star playing the president of Ukraine, and then aired that TV show on his networks that were very prevalent in Ukraine. So basically made this guy even more famous as the president of Ukraine, then funded his campaign to run for the real presidency of Ukraine. So it's like, I mean, this guy's been a puppet all along. Like,
yeah, exactly. He has no power. He also has, no, he's not brave at all. I mean, he's just basically leading his people to get killed, to have permanent war. He's basically happy to be the battering ram for the U.S. And, at some point, I mean, this is Scott Ritter's prediction. He's going to do what Ashraf Ghani did and just catch a plane to Miami and, get paid off. And he's done his dirty work and that's it. So, I mean, Zelensky is basically just a pretty face. He's lipstick on a pig.
And even if you wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, again, Scott Ritter's point was that the Nazis may not be huge in number in the Ukraine military. I mean, it's tough to know the exact number, but they're the most violent, and that gives them huge control. So multiple Ukrainian leaders or diplomats have been executed. It's at least 3 or more, or threatened. And, 3 have been executed for basically saying they should sit down with Russia. So if you wanted to give Zelensky every benefit of the doubt in the world, the least you could say is, well, he's afraid if he actually sits down with Russia, he'll be killed. And therefore, there's no peace. There's no serious peace talks going on. And the U.S. wants that. The U.S. is fine with it. These are the people we're funding and arming.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's plenty of evidence of Nazis actually threatening Zelensky's life. So, I mean, you can imagine if you're a bunch of Nazis who basically, Yevhen Karas, who's the leader of the C-14 Nazi gang that has contracts with the state to do patrols. He said that we have a state within a state in Ukraine. So while it's not every, it's not an actual, Sieg Heiling Nazi state in the same way that, like Nazi Germany was. But they just basically have taken over the structure of the state. There's an article in actually Radio Free Europe, the CIA propaganda outlet from a couple of years ago, that I found really fascinating, where there was an episode in like 2017, 2018, where a cop was breaking up a Nazi rally, and the cop threw a Nazi to the ground and said, "Stay down, Banderite." Banderite is a reference to Stepan Bandera, the Nazi collaborator, who's basically now, he's a hero for the Nazis and basically nationalists in Ukraine. And what happened was there was a huge amount of outrage against the cop who said that. He was punished, I think forced to resign. And there was a hashtag campaign in which, originating from the Ministry of Interior, and all of the police officials in the country were all tweeting and putting on Facebook in Ukrainian hashtag I am Banderite. So they're all just saying openly, I'm a Nazi. No, we're all Nazis. They're all saying it explicitly.
Tripping over themselves.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, okay, maybe like not every single person who's fighting in the, Ukrainian military is a Nazi for sure. There are people who being conscripted, I'm sure, who definitely against their own will. But to deny that Nazis have basically very serious power, and are very violent and willing to kill anyone who dares oppose them, is disingenuous, and that's the reality of Ukraine.
So, folks, this is the type of discussion I feel like we need, and it'd be lovely to have it on our mainstream media, but that isn't going to happen anytime soon. So, if you want to see Dan's incredible work continue, and you want to see me start a new show, then we need your help. It's an Indiegogo campaign for Behind the Headlines and Mint Press. And you can find it by the link that's scrolling across the bottom of the page. Also, you can just go to Indiegogo.com and search for Behind the Headlines. And, please share this, let people know, join the campaign, be a part of it. And hopefully I can start that new show, and hopefully Dan can finish all these amazing docs, which we only went through 2 of them. I think you have a few more, right?
Indeed.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much for joining us today, and I hope to see a lot more of you. And thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Lee. Yeah, looking forward to it. So everyone, tell your uncle, your grandma, support our work, and if you can't, we still appreciate the support anyway. But we rely on our viewers. So thank you.
Yep. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody. Keep fighting.